This is All India Radio. In the program Spotlight, now we bring you a discussion on Aero India 2023, the runway to a billion opportunities. The participants are Air Vice Marshal Manmohan Bahadur, Defence Analyst, and S. Rangabashyam, AIR Correspondent.
Air Vice Marshal Manmohan Bahadur, a warm welcome to the program, sir. And today, Aero India show 2023 kicked off with big fanfare, which was inaugurated by the Honorable Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi. And today, it is actually a 5-day event, and today is just the first day. What would you say that today's highlight was as far as the Aero India show is concerned, sir?
Thank you for getting me on the program, Ranga. Aero India is the showpiece for Indian aviation, indigenous aviation, and that's where we showcase to the world, like any other air show in the world, what the nation produces, what are the nation's priorities, and what is the nation's further plans as far as aviation is concerned. Now, we must remember, Aero India 2023 is a military air show. We have another civilian one that happens in Hyderabad the next year. It's alternate years. So today's highlights was the fly past and the display by our aircraft and helicopters, fixed-wing aircraft and helicopters. So we saw the Indian Air Force Chief leading the fly past in a Tejas, and that was called the Gurukul Formation. So the name is symbolic of our ethos as far as our teaching is concerned, as far as our training is concerned. When we talk of training, HAL has, the Hindustan Aeronautics Limited has a large fleet of aircraft which it produces, starting off with the now HTT-40, which will come into the Air Force inventory starting next year. The Kirans, which are flying and which I also flew way back in 1975-76. So it's an old war horse which is on its way out now. And then we have, as far as the Tejas trainer, which is there for training the Tejas pilots. Then we have the helicopters, the Advanced Light Helicopter Dhruv, the various versions of that. There are 4 versions. And the Light Combat Helicopter, the LCH or the Prachand. So these were all showcased, besides the other aircraft, of course, the fighters, the transports, the Dornier, the transport aircraft. And I think the most scintillating performance was by our display teams, which were there, the Surikirans and the Saraks.
Yeah. So what would you say that, this time around, it's predominantly the focus is on Make in India and indigenous production of defense products and their exports to as many countries as possible. So don't you think Made in India or Make in India project, that is the main focus this time around?
Yes, that is the stated aim of the government and of the program people of the Aero India program. And but I should add that for any air show, the aim is always to showcase indigenous industry. It is not for the others to showcase. They all come there. The foreign vendors come there with an attempt to sell their items to people who are interested. This time, and like always, HAL would have a stall, DRDO has a stall, our private players have their stalls, and they showcase what has been produced and what they are willing to sell. And, tough negotiations happen. The first 2 days are the business days, and the remaining 3 days become the public display, where the general public goes. So, worth of a show, air show, is how many contracts are signed. So, one would wait and see what is the net result of this particular thing. It may not exactly be in terms of contracts, but even if interests are shown, then that will be an indication of how successful Aero India 2023 has been.
Yeah. But sir, it has been touted that probably there will be some around 250 agreements having a value of around 75,000 crore rupees. So isn't that really overwhelming? And even if we actually achieve 50% of that, that would be really commendable.
It would be. Let's wait for what are the types of contracts that are signed. That's what is important. What is it that foreigners, foreign agents, foreign nations or foreign entities are willing to buy from our manufacturing industry? That is what is important. That shows the level of expertise and technology that our indigenous industry, whether public or private, has achieved. What is important to note at the end of when the Aero India is the type of contracts that are signed, because that would indicate the confidence level of, say, foreign manufacturers in Indian products. Aviation, as you know, is a very safety-oriented area, and no shortcuts or no compromises are accepted. So while values and contract values would be very interesting to see, what in my view would be more interesting is what are the types of contracts and what are the types of technology that and equipment that we were able to sell.
Right, sir. Some big companies which are there in the defense sector like Lockheed Martin, or for that matter even Boeing, Airbus and others like Dassault and others, do you think our government will be able to kind of persuade them with really attractive schemes to come to India and set up their manufacturing base as such, even if it is just a one or two module of a entire thing?
It's important to understand, how much of importance we give to small, like you say, modules being manufactured. Like, for example, HAL has been manufacturing Airbus doors and flap rails for quite some time. Now, that is a very small part of the Airbus aircraft that you and I fly, that commercial airlines fly.
Yeah.
So, we must be very clear that when we evaluate these things, we take a professional view. So, as a professional, what I would say is that, yes, the government has taken steps. For example, the Apache fuselage is being made in India by Boeing. And similarly, the Lockheed Martin has got its plant here in Hyderabad. And both of them are making big structures for aircraft, for sure. Right? Aim is to get more of these structures going. And if I may add right now here, also the local metallurgy. That's so very important. I'm not very sure whether metallurgy is indigenous, going into these airframes, or the Lockheed Martin and Boeing get metals from outside and make it here. I'm not too sure of that. But metallurgy is something which is very important.
This year's theme of Aero India is the runway to 1 billion opportunities. Obviously, opportunities in every direction for everyone. But can we expect this to translate into, job opportunities as well, employment creation in a big way?
If we set up industries, if the private industry and private capitalists sink in more money, get more contracts, open more factories, then an ecosystem develops around a major element of aircraft being produced within the country. So yes, if the industry is developed, then the ecosystem that goes around it, the tier 3, tier 4 manufacturers are the places where actual job creation happens. So let's wait and see how Aero India is able to entice foreign participation and foreign money into India as far as purchases are concerned and setting up of the factories and modules is concerned.
Yeah. And so what do you think as far as export is concerned, although, currently India is actually exporting to a number of countries, but in times to come, say in the next 5 to 10 years, do you feel that Indian defense companies, maybe completely Indian or maybe in a joint venture kind of a setup with foreign collaborators, will be able to make India a manufacturing hub and export in a substantial way to all the countries, whether they are in Europe or in the American continent?
It's important to have our feet on ground. The point is that when we talk of indigenization, it takes years and decades to set up any aircraft manufacturing plant. And no country in the world is 100% local. It just cannot happen. For example, aero engines. Aero engine manufacturing companies in the world are 4 or 5. That's it. So, for example, the C-130 from America has a British engine, has a Rolls-Royce engine. So, to expect that everything will become 100% is not being right. And it cannot be, it should not be. What is important is that we aggregate, we have integrators. All these Lockheed Martin and Boeing are big integrators. They buy stuff, they produce of course some of them, but they buy from all over the world and make the final product. And that's what we buy and pay for. Aim is to get that type of capability within the country. Documentation of an aircraft is huge time-consuming effort. So, we had an issue with the Advanced Light Helicopter Group. They were exported to Ecuador, but there were issues with that and that stopped and the aircraft had to be grounded. So we should learn from our problems and go forward from here.
Right. And Aero India all these years has been held at the Yelahanka Air Base in Bangalore. And Bangalore, the very name, when you mention the name Bangalore, it immediately reminds everyone of the software industry, the software and technology companies based there, which cater not only to India and Asia, but to the entire world. Is there scope as far as software is also concerned, where especially Bangalore and cities like Hyderabad and others can contribute a lot to integrate all these machines and hardware? The software would also be playing a very big role where Bangalore can chip in?
Oh yes. The aircraft presently, besides the hardware and the airframes we see, is a flying avionics, entity actually. The amount of electronics that are there are mind-boggling. So the software that goes behind the hardware is very important. And there are a lot of private entities who are already making software. For example, the Tejas software in the flight control system is all indigenous.
Oh.
That's the good part of Tejas, the flight control system, which is important. And it's a fly-by-wire aircraft. So software, as you said, whether it is Bangalore, it's Hyderabad or anywhere up north, any company which can produce good software, that is required for all the components, literally in a way, that go into any modern aircraft. Yes, and that's part of the money that a company makes and for revenue generation.
Right. And so all these years, whenever we mention the word defense or defense production, it used to be kind of linked up with national security, where that the private sector was kind of not welcome a couple of years back. Now the policy seems to be shifting altogether. And even where we talk about instruments or warheads being of sensitive nature, there could be n number of items which are just not sensitive and which can be given to the private sector to manufacture.
Absolutely correct. And we must remember that the private sector is as patriotic and as nationalistic as the government sector. They are Indians.
Wonderful. Really?
As much as you and I are. So I see no reason, and it's so good to see the large number of private sector players that have entered the defense field and are continuing to do so because they see a future in that. So there are more areas that need to be opened out. For example, making of armament. If we can buy a missile, an air-to-air missile from a foreign private entity, I see no reason why an Indian private entity can't be given the requirements of the Indian Air Force, for example, and they make a missile for us. Or the DRDO or the ADA transfers technology to a private sector to make. And just remember, the nuclear project is got a big private player in there, Indian private player, manufacturing it as part of the manufacturing. So if required, make the people who are part of the group sign the Official Secrets Act, and that's it. And even without that, I'm sure there are ways and means of maintaining secrecy. So we must open up to the private sector, and that is how it should be.
On that optimistic note, let's wind up this discussion, and let's hope that India very soon becomes the world's largest defense manufacturing base. Air Vice Marshal Manmohan Bahadur, thank you so much for joining us, sir.
Thank you very much, and Jai Hind.
You were listening to a discussion on Aero India 2023, the runway to a billion opportunities. The participants were Air Vice Marshal Manmohan Bahadur, Defence Analyst, and S. Rangabashyam, AIR Correspondent. This program was produced and presented by the News Services Division of All India Radio. You can listen to it on our mobile app, News on AIR. This program is also available on our YouTube channel, News on AIR Official. You may email your opinion about this program at airnsdtalks@gmail.com.